What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. Today we're on College Football 26 and I'm bringing you a tip for Dynasty mode. Specifically, I'm bringing you a how-to guide on how to set up your protected opponents or protected rivalries, whatever you want to call them. The game calls them protected opponents, but it's not as intuitive as you might think, and there aren't many videos, if any at all, out there on the game so far covering this specific topic, and in my opinion it's really useful, and a lot of people are going to want to have their protected games on their schedule, especially if you're going to be doing any conference realignment, any adjusting or anything like that. You're definitely going to want to have some of those protected games, as well as if you have some big rivalries that you want to make sure are on your schedule. So in order to take a look at this, we're going to start up a brand new Dynasty, because you do have to do this in the Dynasty setup. We are just going to start a single player Dynasty. You can start it on single player or multiplayer. It's going to work for both. You can utilize the default or active roster. Right now there's only one roster out regardless, and you're going to go to custom conferences, which is going to be the bottom setting. Once you click into custom conferences, you're going to be able to realign teams by clicking on them. We all kind of know this if we've played College Football 25, but what you want to do is you want to press square. You'll see at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, and obviously this will be different depending on what platform you're on, but on PS5, you're going to press square for conference rules. And last year you did have many of these same options, but this year whenever you actually turn on your protected opponents, you'll be able to select one or two protected opponents, and I'll get into a little bit of detail here. That matters depending on how many teams you have in your conference, and if you don't have enough teams in your conference, you won't actually even be able to turn protected opponents on. Regardless though, you turn it on, you can select between one or two protected opponents depending on what you're doing. And then this is the kind of counterintuitive part that you might miss, which is in the bottom left hand corner you can press triangle to bring up the protected opponents, and this is the new screen that you're going to be able to utilize. Luckily, if you have protected opponents set using that settings screen for all of these different conferences, you can easily press R1 and L1, left bumper, right bumper, in order to bounce between each conference and set the protected opponents. Now again, you have to set that, otherwise you have to keep backing out and coming back in. So in my personal opinion, my recommendation would be to go to every single conference that you want protected opponents on, click square, go in there, set it to whatever number you want, go over to the next conference, click square, turn it on, set it to the number you want, and then once you have them all set to have protected opponents the way that you want, you then go into triangle for protected opponents, and you can easily go through and set those opponents. Now the real simple way that this works is a individual team can only be set as a protected opponent of other teams 2 times. So you'll see here Syracuse in this entire menu is only going to pop up 2 times. Same thing with Cal, they're only going to pop up 2 times. Same thing with every single other team, and each individual team only gets to select 2 protected opponents. So real simple, if you want to switch them out, let's say I wanted to make California's protected opponent number 2 Syracuse, I'm going to click on the spot that I want to take out, and then I'm going to go click on the team that I want to bump into that spot, and it'll say the protected opponent swap has been successful. There are a couple of other tools that you can utilize here. You can use the generate button by clicking in the right stick, or the complete button by clicking in the left stick. That's going to mix things up using the regenerate button, and it's going to complete it if they're not already filled out by doing it the other way. So you can see I just clicked in the right stick there and it redid all of these protected opponents. Now what you will notice when I regenerated them for the Big Ten and I go back over to the ACC, these did not change. So you can regenerate for each one. If you hit the regenerate button, it's not going to regenerate every single conference's protected opponents. So you can know there's a little bit of certainty there. Once you've done one, you're going to be safe to do another one. Now I've had a glitch happen a couple of times where for a conference that I just turned on protected opponents, this has happened to me for the Mountain West and for the American, only one of these sides will show. Very often that'll happen if you've made a lot of changes. All you need to do is simply back out, and then these columns will appear the next time you come back into this screen. So just be aware that You know, you might pop up with these two columns for protected opponents on the right side, and these two might be missing. It's not that one side or the other can't have protected opponents. It's very simply the fact that there is a little bit of glitchiness that can happen there where they just don't show up at all. Now, as I was mentioning, protected opponents is a little bit different depending on what you have going on. So one of those little nuances, we'll go to the Sun Belt, for example, and we'll go to their conference rules and turn on protected opponents. They're only going to allow me to turn on one, even though I have a ton of teams. I have enough teams, if it was a regular conference, to be able to have two protected opponents. Well, why can we only have one protected opponent? Whenever we go into the protected opponents, it is divided by the East and the West, by the two divisions of the conference. And so therefore, there are less teams to be able to pick from, and the protected opponents are across the two sides, across the two divisions. So these left side teams can protect an opponent against the right side and vice versa. And then, as I mentioned, with the number of teams, you cannot have protected opponents unless you have enough teams. So taking a look at the Pac-12 here, I simply cannot access any of those options for protected opponents. However, if I start adding in a bunch of teams over here to the Pac-12, I will inevitably be able to add protected opponents. As you can see here, I now have 9 teams in the Pac-12, and I go and I still cannot add protected opponents. So you might be wondering, oh, maybe that conference just can't have protected opponents. Well, that is not the case. Once you hit 10 teams, you will then be able to add protected opponents, and you're going to be able to add 1 or 2 at that point. So I went ahead and regenerated here, and as you can see, it took having 10 teams to be able to turn this setting on, and we can have 2 protected opponents for every team in that conference. So that's basically everything you need to know as far as protected opponents are concerned. It is worthwhile to mention that once you actually do start your dynasty with teams that have protected opponents on, it is going to limit your scheduling capabilities. So we're going to go ahead and start this dynasty real quick just so that you can see and make sure that we've actually covered everything that we need to cover about this, because again, that's what we do here on the channel. And this one's actually not too bad. There aren't a whole lot of spaces that are locked in. I've gotten it to where teams have basically 1 or 2 opponents that they can adjust. It looks like Boise here has a little bit more flexibility going on with their schedule. And again, a lot of that depends on various different factors within the game, such as games that are already scheduled to be locked in, as well as your number of conference games that you have to play, those settings that you've set in your conference settings. So teams that have those automatic games on their schedule, like Army-Navy, for example, that automatically takes up a week of their season, they're more likely to have less flexibility in scheduling. And there have been times here when I've been testing this out where no matter which way I sliced it, I had to have 3 straight bye weeks in a row, simply because I had so many locked in games because of the protected opponents and everything that was going on, that it did create some complications. So it's not all great if you want to do protected opponents. Just be aware that it can really lock you into pretty much the same schedule or a very similar schedule year after year. You're potentially taking away some of your flexibility that you would normally have in your scheduling. But at the end of the day, I'm really curious what you guys are doing in your dynasties, so let me know down in the comments section below what you guys are doing. Are you going to utilize the new protected opponents capability? What teams are you guys playing with in Dynasty this year? What's your approach to Dynasty? Last year we had a whole slew of different dynasties that we did, from great teams to terrible teams. It seems like building teams is going to be a little bit more viable this year because players can progress their devs, and it's going to be potentially a little bit easier to level up skill caps and whatnot. So the smaller teams are a bit more viable. You don't have to always get 4 and 5 star players in order to have a chance at high dev players. You can progress those players over time. So let me know what you guys are doing. The one that we're doing right now to start off the season is mostly teams that are a little bit competitive right now, in the high 70s into low 80s. I'm playing as UCLA because they have a lot of potential upside. So let me know that down in the comment section below. Make sure you guys leave a like on this video. Like I said, leave a comment and subscribe if you haven't already. Subscribe if this video was helpful to you. As always, I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you have a good one.